These are some of the most emotionally charged moments in MasterChef history. And what this contestant did brought the worst out of Chef Ramsay, Hell's Kitchen style. In the 12th episode of Season 4, the top 12 were introduced to Anya and Aaron by the judges. They explained that they would be cooking for the couple's wedding. This was basically another team challenge. Anya gave a list of food items that she didn't want to see at her wedding reception, and this left a lot of cooks in dismay. Chef Ramsay then revealed that they would receive help and guidance from him and Chef Graham to ensure things went smoothly. To be a little bit more specific, Ramsay and Graham took charge of both the appetizers and dessert courses, and the top 12 focused on just the entrees. The home cooks were divided into two teams and cooked for over 100 guests, of which 15 were vegetarian. Since Natasha Kernyak and James Nelson were the winners of the previous challenge, they got to pick their teams. James, who is the blue team's captain, chose Lynn, Jesse, Bree, Johnny, and Luca. Meanwhile, Natasha, the red team's captain, chose Eddie Jackson, Savannah Sturgis, Bethany Rosos, Jordan Roots, and Chrissy. As an added little bonus, Natasha and James also got to exempt one team member from cooking in the challenge. This would grant them immunity should their team lose. Shockingly, they chose to exempt Chrissy and Bree. Now, both teams were given 2 hours for the challenge. Natasha and James were invited to taste Chef Graham's appetizer, a pea soup with whipped cream fraiche. Plus, they tasted Chef Ramsay's dessert, sticky toffee pudding with brown bread, ice cream, and caramel sauce. They now had to execute their dishes at the same level as the judges. This definitely wasn't going to be an easy task. In the blue team, James decided on a rack lamb with parsnip puree. It would also include a vegetarian side dish of grilled mushroom over goat cheese crème fraîche. In the red team, Natasha decided on a halibut beurre blanc, and for the vegetarian dish, the team decided on an eggplant and tomato stack. As the wedding ceremony started, the preparation began at the back. The red team started to struggle, with them burning carrots to a crisp, much to the judges' amusement. Since Natasha seemed to be falling apart, Chef Ramsay went and asked her if she was alright, since she looked really flustered. Natasha said that she needed more support from her team, much to the red team's dismay. Chef Ramsay then told Natasha to refocus, bring her team together, and asked her to be more vocal. But Natasha didn't seem to be listening to Chef Ramsay, and that angered him deeply. Meanwhile, the blue team's preparation was going smoothly, but the red team was still struggling badly. As the reception began, Chef Graham's appetizer made its way to the guest tables. And well, obviously, everyone enjoyed it. After a delicious appetizer, the guests' expectations were really high. Both teams needed to deliver the exact top-notch quality. With only 30 seconds left to go for the entrees in the red team, Savannah still needed 3 more minutes with her prep. This made the judges incredibly worried. The blue team assigned Lynn with the presentation, and he wasn't executing things up to expectations. Looking at this mess, Chef Ramsay was frustrated, and the delay only made things worse.
Everyone's just stopped all of a sudden. I've never seen such disorganization.
The first serving was at the bride and groom's table, and both teams weren't ready yet. In the red team, Natasha was trying to do everything by herself, which made Chef Ramsay furious.
You have to stop running around like a headless chicken. You position yourself at the table and you expedite.
The red team finally got it together and sent out their first plate. The blue team was also ready, only to be stopped by a very angry Chef Ramsay for serving it on dirty plates. The red team's halibut dish was served to the bride and groom's table, whereas the blue team replated their lamb rack dish. And this made Chef Ramsay extremely angry with the blue team.
And it's taken 7 minutes to get 4 plates out. You're all running around like headless chickens.
The blue team finally got back on track, and their dish made it to the dining room. In the red team, Natasha finally got herself together and showed some commendable leadership skills. But the blue team was still behind, much to Chef Ramsay's frustration.
Got 2 tables, dragging the blue team's entrees. Come on!
Lynn started feeling the pressure of having to keep up with the service. He started sweating profusely, and he was violating the health code. Seeing this, Chef Ramsay became infuriated.
I know it's hard. You cannot sweat in the food.
Lynn was plating the dishes inconsistently, and an annoyed Chef Ramsay asked him if he was blind in one eye. Joe then came and informed Chef Ramsay about tables with no blue plates, leaving the guests hungry. Things were so bad that Joe feared the guests would leave without tasting the blue team's dishes. The stress got to Lynn so much that he started making a huge mistake. And that mistake doubled Chef Ramsay's anger. He used the same cloth to wipe the plates that he used to wipe his sweat. Yuck! One guest even told Joe that if he had been in the restaurant, he would have walked out. On the other hand, the red team was sending out their plates at a good pace. The blue team was making mistake after mistake, and seeing nothing going right, Chef Ramsay put Chef Graham as the expediter. With Chef Graham's help, the blue team was finally sending out their dishes. But obviously, it was the red team who won this challenge. However, in this next entry, two teams locked horns over one challenge. But when you don't adhere to the rules, you face the consequences. And no, it's not pretty. In the 14th episode of Season 3, the top 14 competed in a team challenge. They needed to cook a breakfast for 130 guests residing in the same hotel they were staying at. The judges split them into two teams, with 7 members in each team. Since Christine Ha and Josh Marks were the winners of the previous challenge, they were named the team captains and got to choose who they wanted in their team. Christine was the captain of the red team, and she chose Felix Fang, Scott Little, Tanya Noble, Mike Hill, Stacey Amagrand, and Ryan Umane. Josh was the captain of the blue team, and he chose Becky Reams, Frank Mirando, Anna Rossi, Monte Carlo, David Martinez, and Tali Clavijo. The judges then revealed that Christina had an advantage of swapping a member. Since she had the best dish in the previous challenge, she swapped Ryan out for Becky. The judges then assigned the breakfast menu, fruit salad, pancakes, oatmeal, eggs benedict, egg white omelets, and 2 eggs with bacon and spinach style. Both teams had 90 minutes for prep and 90 minutes for serving the 130 guests. The teams needed to pick an expediter, so in the blue team, they picked Monty, and in the red team, they picked Felix. In the blue team, Josh assigned David to the oatmeal, Anna and Tally to the fruit salad, Frank to the pancakes, and everyone else except for Monty to the omelets and eggs benedict. In the red team, Christine assigned herself and Becky to the eggs benedict, Scott to the pancakes, and everyone else except for Felix to the oatmeal, fruit salads, and omelets. With only 35 minutes left before the service began, Chef Ramsay got concerned with the red team. It seemed like they didn't make enough hollandaise sauce for the eggs benedict. In the blue team, Chef Graham was concerned with their bacon and spinach. Both teams were making the judges concerned. But from the red team, Christine was concerned with Felix not being so vocal like how Monty was in the blue team. As the service began, in the blue team, Monty and Josh got off to a little screaming match. Now, because of that, the red team's first order didn't go out on time. And well, this frustrated Chef Ramsay.
And for the last 5 minutes, you've just shut down and there's no communication going on.
Meanwhile, the blue team served theirs, and they were also sending out orders at a good pace. The blue team was receiving good reviews from their guests, but the red team faced another problem. Felix tried to solve the problem by using minimal sauce on the eggs benedict, but that's not how it works. An eggs benedict needs to have a good amount of hollandaise sauce. Seeing this, Chef Ramsay chewed her out and told her that it wasn't a dessert that she was drizzling the sauce on. Since Felix was going nowhere with her communication, Christine took charge of being the vocal leader. And because of that, the red team rose up from disaster. In the blue team, their standards dropped down since Chef Ramsay discovered pancakes coming out sloppy and eggs benedict being raw. And this made Chef Ramsay annoyed.
You're cooking them, he's taking them, you're serving them. It's wrong.
Things got even worse for the blue team when Joe returned with a plate with hair on it. In the red team, Felix finally started communicating pretty well and orders started flying out. Meanwhile, in the blue team, Josh and Monty got into an argument and things were falling apart.
Dude, that was a hot... That's ridiculous.
What is going on?
Now, time was up for both teams. However, Felix didn't pay attention to the announcement of the challenge being over and continued to work. And this pissed Chef Ramsay off.
I just told you, time is up.
Sorry,
No, look at me. No cheating.
Despite all the problems, the red team was declared the winner. Now, nobody expected this next contestant to stay on the show after the colossal mistake she made, but in MasterChef, expect the unexpected. This took place on the 7th day, where the top 15 contestants were given a mystery box filled with amazing ingredients. On top of this, they would receive a fresh rack of lamb to include in their dish. The contestants had 60 minutes to wow the judges with their creativity, and everyone seemed to come up with brilliant ideas. But Jennifer, on the other hand, decided to try something bold. She used a whole rack of lamb instead of going for just one of the chops. I kinda wanna know what she was smoking when she came up with this idea, since she only had 10 minutes to wrap things up when she thought of it. And you don't have to be a seasoned chef to know that an entire rack of lamb will definitely take really long to cook. What she could have done was just make it simpler and use the chops to let the flavors of the dish shine through. Jennifer was determined to deliver, but would her lamb fail on her? I mean, with just 10 minutes to cook this rack, she was bound to fail. It was only when this challenge was about to end that she started second-guessing her decision. All her fears came true when Chef Ramsay singled out her dish and said this.
Your dish definitely stood out, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons.
Be it Hell's Kitchen, MasterChef, or Top Chef, you just can't serve anything that's inedible, and that's exactly what Jennifer did. While Chef Ramsay left it at that, Judge Joe wasn't having any of it. He wanted to make a point, so he walked up to her station and berated her.
This is a complete disaster. This lamb is raw.
I mean, this is just one rule you can't take for granted, and it's not even about the show or technique anymore. Cooking meat correctly is a basic necessity. You just can't serve raw food, period. I mean, just take a look at that chunk of meat.
It would be dangerous to serve a piece of lamb like this to a judge.
If she had any doubts, which I'm sure she did, the saner thing to have done would have been to back off. Admitting you screwed up would have been way better than serving this nasty mess, Jennifer. I mean, really, what was the worst that could have happened? You would have just landed in the bottom 3 and could have always bounced back during the elimination test that followed. Unfortunately for Jennifer, she just had to go through Joe's wrath.
We're here to judge this thing. We're watching you cook. We're not idiots.
He then said one thing that Jennifer was dreading to hear.
If it were for me, this is not an elimination round. I would send you home now.
But not every viewer was happy with Joe's criticism here. One YouTube user commented that Joe was just a warped version of Chef Ramsay. The user even went on to say that Joe was simply trying to humiliate her without actually giving any constructive criticism. But do you think Joe's anger was justified? Considering how this was MasterChef and not a joke, I think he's absolutely right. But this next contestant wasted 60 minutes to cook a small portion of a langoustine dish. And when it was time to taste it, what the judges did was totally unexpected. If you've noticed, there are some contestants who stay because of their capabilities and extraordinary skill set. But then there are those who just get lucky and ride the wave with the others. One such person happens to be Howard Simpson, a barback from season 4 who surprised everyone by staying in the competition. It was quite surprising considering how he did poorly in most of the challenges. One Redditor couldn't fathom how Howard was able to stay for as long as he did, while another user wrote that Sasha Fox should have stayed instead of him. Which makes me wonder, was Howard actually that bad? As you may know, challenges are a great way for the contestants to showcase their talents. And well, the Mystery Box Challenge particularly allows the contestants to play with their creativity. But when I say play, it doesn't mean that they could just plate whatever they want. It just means that they should play it smart and use their skills to impress the judges. Howard wanted to do exactly that, but he forgot to add magic, imagination, innovation, and art into his dish. However, are you wondering what exactly went wrong with this dish? Well, sit tight because this is gonna surprise you. On the first day of MasterChef, the top 19 chefs were challenged with the Mystery Box Challenge. And this time, all the chefs except Natasha Kerjak and Savannah Sturges were given the invention test to fight for their place. Langoustine happened to be the main component, and the contestants just had 60 minutes to pump out a delicious dish. While everyone was playing with their creativity, Howard's creativity was put into question by Chef Ramsay. He decided to poach the beautiful langoustine with a champagne vinaigrette containing strawberries. Was he trying to make a dessert out of it? Well, I can't tell, but let's see what the judges thought. When it was finally time to judge the dishes, I had a feeling that Howard's dream would be hanging by a thread. And well, when he presented the dish, all I could think about was what kind of rabbit food he was serving. I mean, 60 minutes for a damn salad? Was he growing a garden in there? Well, I could tell that Chef Ramsay was stunned by this dish and had a pretty valid question to ask.
Did you disappear into the library for half an hour?
No, I did not.
I mean, like seriously? What the hell was he doing for the last 60 minutes? Salads don't nearly take that long to make.
I see no vinaigrette.
This is a joke.
Howard left Chef Ramsay speechless with the creation that he presented. And well, Chef Ramsay was so disappointed that he didn't even want to give it a taste.
I'm shocked. In fact, I'm not even going to eat it.
Well, that was a pretty expected reaction, but he wasn't the only one who was disappointed. While the famous chef just walked away, what Judge Joe did next was shocking.
This is a waste of our time.
If you thought that was brutal, then hold on because Chef Ramsay wasn't done ripping Howard a new one yet.
But if that's the best you can do, then you are in the wrong kitchen.
Oh, I bet Howard didn't see that one coming. But this next contestant was busy eating his own dish rather than listening to the judges' feedback. What exactly do you think might happen to this guy? Well, I could assure you that this one isn't gonna go down very well. Meet Christian Collins, a stay-at-home dad who knew how to cook but had an extremely cocky attitude. One Reddit user couldn't understand why Christian was hated so much even though he was good at cooking. But being competent at cooking isn't the only thing that matters. However, another one pitched in and listed out different reasons to hate Christian. This included being disrespectful and pompous, among other things. Well, I simply can't agree with this comment more since Christian wasn't only disrespectful towards his fellow contestants, but also towards the judges. You see, on the 11th day of Season 2, Christian miserably failed to make a good impression. But what's important to note is that it wasn't because of his dish, but rather because of his actions. Let me help you recall this drama. The top 11 chefs were given not one, but 2 mystery boxes. One was regular sized and the other one was fairly large. While the regular one had vegetables, the large one had everyone's favorite protein, lobster. As Christian started working, he accidentally broke his food processor and went into a rage frenzy since he had little time left. Given the situation, I understand that being calm would be challenging, but Christian turned into a mad monkey.
Can I get some new pasta, please?
While he got some help getting some pasta, his dish wasn't among the top 3.
You are not in the top 3. There was just such an anger with your cooking.
Honestly, this outcome was pretty unfair. Christian neither had his mind nor his heart in the food that he'd prepared. Knowing how Christian was, I knew he wouldn't be happy with whoever got called to the front. And quite expectedly, he had something really nasty to say.
Jennifer sucks.
I don't think she has as much food knowledge as I do.
This is when he started acting like a complete ass. Listening to the feedback judges have for others is pretty important because you never know if it might help you. However, Christian had other plans in mind.
It just has a really nice rustic flavor.
Dude didn't give a damn about what was happening around him and completely forgot about something. The judges always have an eye on everyone during their time on the show.
I'm gonna personally come over there and throw you out of here. You show no respect, and I'm not gonna deal with it.
The funny thing about this whole situation was Christian's expression. He looked like he was being chastised for nothing. But we all know that isn't true at all. And honestly, this wasn't the first time Christian was berated for his attitude. But what makes it even worse was that he never learned from it. He just carried on with his goddamn snarky attitude. In an interview with Click Clack, Christian admitted to being a douchebag. However, he also added something Jennifer said about his arrogance in an interview. Christian said, "I was a douchebag sometimes. I was trying to win. I was a little upset. I read some interviews with Jennifer Bem, the winner, after the fact, and she was kinda throwing me under the bus. I mean, what are you, mad that you won? There's no need to throw me under the bus after a show like that." She basically said something to the effect of, "Is Christian really that arrogant?" And she goes, "I wish I could say Christian isn't like that all the time, but he is that, and worse." Well, I think Jennifer just stated some facts, and once again, Christian was just being high-handed. But this next contestant pissed off a judge by acting like an entitled child when the judges were just giving him some feedback. However, would he be able to get away with it? I sure hope not, but Christopher Liu, a restaurant manager, showed the world that he definitely had some skill. However, much like the other contestant, he was sadly disliked for his poor attitude. One Reddit user, who disliked Christopher's better-than-you attitude, called him out for being entitled. What happened is, on the 12th day of Season 6, the top 10 chefs were first given a team challenge. But after the blue team lost the challenge, they had to fight in order to stay back in the pressure test. Not every dish turns out to be perfect all the time, but one could always improve their skills with the right direction and by implementing feedback. However, in Christopher's case, instead of just taking in the feedback, he chose to show some attitude. During the pressure test, the home cooks had 25 minutes to make an appetizing gnocchi for the judges. However, Christopher failed to serve one.
Your dumplings are definitely more on the under-seasoned side.
Okay.
He was already showing some attitude since Christina gave him some constructive criticism. Every time he said okay, I felt like telling him to change his tone and sound more polite. He just sounded so dismissive. When Ramsay came to taste his dish, he wasn't happy with how the dish looked. The gnocchi looked so disappointing that the famous chef was mad at him for ruining something so mouth-watering.
Rule number one, that chefs need to season things smartly and not allow the customer to season it. That's the whole idea.
Okay.
Christina could sense his arrogance, but what Christopher did next made her furious.
Rolling your eyes to the balcony while Gordon's tasting your dish. When we say we see everything, we mean it.
That shrug Christopher gave was so disrespectful that only someone as cold as him would react that way. The audacity of the chef was incomparable to anyone else on the show. Anyway, let's discuss some more of what Christopher said in his AMA. While one Reddit user felt that Christina singled him out and picked on him on purpose, they wanted to know if Christopher felt the same way. And what Christopher wrote in response actually surprised me. He said that he didn't believe Christina tried to single him out and that she didn't pull any punches. He also went on to add that her story was very similar to his upbringing, where he had to fight his way to reach where he was. Christopher was also grateful that she was tough on him since it helped him deliver a better performance. Well, I'm really glad he thinks this way. That's probably the reason why a few viewers are a fan of this guy. Like this user right here, who blamed the camera angles and editing to portray Christopher in a negative light. They also claimed that the producers only showed Christopher being disrespectful, but in truth, he was just frustrated. And what do you know, Christopher was ready to answer this as well. He thanked everyone and claimed that he had no hard feelings towards anyone. All that mattered to him was the journey ahead, and with a little luck and hard work, he hoped that everything would be great in the future. But what's your whole take on this whole camera angle issue? Do you really think Christopher rolling his eyes was all camera work? If that was the case, then why did Christina berate him? Would you blame the show's editors for his attitude? While you think about that, do you remember this next contestant from season 7 who made a huge mistake during a team challenge that left Chef Ramsay extremely furious? It's crazy how things turned out because Manny Washington might just be one of the nicest contestants to ever have been featured on MasterChef. Although he was an amateur in terms of cooking, many felt that Manny went home way too soon. One user wrote about his thoughts on season 7 and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think all of these contestants did leave the show way before their time. Team challenges could be really difficult for some home cooks since they aren't trained professionals. They, without any doubt, have cooked for their family, but cooking for a family and doing so in a competition are very different. In a competition, the cooks get a certain amount of time to prepare the food, which puts a lot of pressure on them. Now, if Manny's mistake was because of pressure, we won't get to know that, but one thing I could say is that Chef Ramsay was extremely furious with him. But before I tell you exactly what happened, let me introduce you to what the team challenge was about. 15 chefs were divided into 2 teams, and Manny was placed into the red one. Both teams had to cook for the Air Force veterans and were given an hour to cook and another one to serve. Now, enough of that, let's see exactly where Manny screwed up. When the serving began, the dishes were flying out from both kitchens. And with that, an equal number of problems landed on the red team's shoulders. Christina brought back a plate that had no mushroom bourbon sauce on it. How could they forget it? Because of this, Chef Ramsay was extremely annoyed.
There's no sauce, there's no mushrooms. That's what you're sending. Do we have any kind of respect for what's going on?
And before you know it, Christina did a crash landing on them by bringing in more plates.
3 are raw, guys.
They're raw. Oh.
What was happening here? Chef Ramsay was furious, but when he learned that the steaks were sliced and served by Manny, he got even more irate. This was because serving raw food to people who keep us safe is extremely disrespectful.
I expect you to take this serious. You save lives. These guys put their lives on the line.
Manny, being a foreman himself, should have known better, and viewers jumped in as well to point out his mistakes. One YouTube user wrote that Manny was doomed the second that he cut the raw steak and sent it out to be served. I mean, couldn't Manny just see that the steaks were raw? Like, he was the one who sliced it and still decided to send it out. Now that's a really big mistake. Well, it's really sad to say that he had to leave the show early, but did you know that Manny took part in Food Network Star? Most of his fans were so excited to see him again. A Redditor even shared his excitement upon seeing familiar faces. And guess what? Manny placed in second. I'm glad he finally got the recognition he deserved. But what happened during MasterChef was definitely unforgivable. Ramsay to his face. However, you have to see how Chef Ramsay reacted. I know Mark is gonna remember this for the rest of his life. It was the first day for the top 20 in season 8 of MasterChef. The first challenge of the day was a mystery box challenge. The box had a paper grocery bag that contained ingredients like broccoli, bananas, carrots, ground beef, chicken breast, rice, canned tomatoes, white cheddar cheese, and chocolate. The contestants had 1 hour to cook the judges a dish using the ingredients, with a huge advantage at stake. Once the challenge was over, Chef Ramsay announced that 3 home cooks stood out amongst the top 20. He then called Sam Rife Passeru, Heather Dombrowski, and Mark Togny to the front. Mark was on cloud 9, believing that he had won the advantage. However, Mark was completely stunned when Chef Ramsay dropped a bomb.
You 3 stood out for all the wrong reasons.
The 3 of them were sent into the wine room, and after that, the judges called the top 3 home cooks one by one. That being Yachicha Holston, Jennifer Williams, and Brian O'Brien. After the judging was over, Chef Ramsay announced Brian as the winner of the first challenge. And because he won the mystery box challenge, Brian was immune from the elimination test. Christina then chose to save Jennifer and Yachicha since they showed great skills. Ramsay then announced that everyone except Sam, Heather, and Mark would be saved since everyone made great dishes in the challenge. The bottom 3 cooks were called back and asked to lay their dishes in front of the judges. And this is what Chef Ramsay thought about them.
Each of these dishes are way off.
None of them had shown the level of skill and technique that the judges were looking for. This trio now had to prove their worth to the judges in the elimination test. After a disastrous failure, who do you think would impress the judges? For the elimination test challenge, they were handed new grocery bags containing the same ingredients using the mystery box challenge. This time, they had 45 minutes to redo their dishes. either by making a new dish or using the feedback they got to make an improved version of the same dish. As the trio got started with the challenge, the judges hoped that they used their second chance wisely. Heather and Sam looked serious, but Mark on the other hand moved slowly. And this reflected in the level of seriousness he had for the competition.
If you aren't pushing yourself, I'm not interested in having you in this kitchen any longer.
With 30 minutes left, Sam was making meatloaf and decided to go with the same thing he'd made earlier. But instead of just correcting his mistakes, Sam made the same mistake again by not putting the meatloaf in the oven, which takes at least 30 minutes to cook. Chef Ramsay was discouraged since it was the meatloaf that put him in the bottom 3. He then gave Sam a tip: if he wanted to make it perfect this time, it should go in the oven. Meanwhile, Heather was making a new dish, grilled chicken kebabs with broccoli slaw. And Mark decided to redo the pancakes with chocolate chips and a side of baked eggs. When Christina went to his station to check on what he was doing, Mark explained the situation using a football analogy. And this is how Christina reacted.
Then why did you try the flea flicker? So I'm gonna go
What's with all these football analogies?
Mark could get eliminated, but it looks like he was still playing games. His lack of seriousness made the judges think that he didn't care about the competition. With 10 minutes left, Chef Ramsay walked over to Heather's station. Brining the chicken to impart flavors takes 24 hours, and Chef Ramsay was surprised to see Heather trying to do that in 45 minutes. And to keep her chicken from getting super dry and rough, Ramsay offered her a piece of advice and said this:
Brush the chimichurri onto the chicken as you're cooking it.
Heather took the advice and continued working on perfecting the dish. But just as Chef Ramsay was leaving the station, Mark said something disrespectful.
You know what you could do, Heather? Just do what I do and ignore them.
Oh no, he didn't just say that. And to Chef Ramsay too. I know this isn't gonna end well for him. Ramsay was so pissed that he first asked Mark if he thought the competition was a joke. But what he said next left everyone in shock.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
Seriously.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
Mark's comments had left everyone feeling stunned.
What is Mark doing? This is embarrassing.
If his attitude continued to be this awful, he wouldn't last very long on the show. As the time ran out, all 3 contestants were ready with their dishes. Sam was the first to have his dish judged, and the judges felt his dish was better than the previous one. However, the presentation was a mess. Heather was the second person to have her dish judged, and the judges thought it was nice and liked the presentation. Mark was the last one to go, and he presented a chocolate chip pancake with baked eggs, bacon, and cilantro. The eggs just looked ugly, and looking at them, Chef Ramsay asked Mark if he was happy with his work. Mark was just arrogant and said this:
In all aspects of it.
When Ramsay questioned Mark if this was the best breakfast he's ever cooked, he actually agreed that it was. The arrogance pissed Chef Ramsay off, but how was the dish? Take a look at this.
That is tough to look at.
Although the pancakes were cooked nicely, the judges decided to boot Mark from the competition. Because, well, with that kind of attitude, he would upset the entire spirit of the competition. And so, Mark was the first to leave MasterChef Season 8. But in this next challenge, Chef Ramsay lost it when he didn't have enough portions of meat left to feed all of his customers. Why? The home cooks had given it all away. In the 12th season of MasterChef Australia, the contestants from the previous seasons were back to win the title of MasterChef. It's just like Hell's Kitchen Season 17's All-Stars. On the second day, the contestants were given their first team service challenge. They were divided into 2 groups, and each team had to prepare a 3-course meal for 120 guests. The judges revealed 3 ingredients: black garlic, ginger, and potatoes. And each team had to feature one of the ingredients for each course. It was actually Chef Ramsay's team service challenge, so you can imagine how tough he was going to be during this service. The blue team had some whiz in their team, like Reynold Pornomo, Amelia Jackson, and Laura Sherritt. In the green team, Callum Han had to face Chef Ramsay's anger. Callum's lamb looked great, and you won't believe what it was compared to. A foot spa? Yikes. Callum promised to come around and not disappoint the famous chef. As the green team was busy sweating and stressing, Reynold made the challenge look like a breeze. He was operating 7 pieces of equipment in a swirl of liquid nitrogen. With the service pressing on, Chef Ramsay went over to the blue team to check how much pork was left. And he was left frustrated with the team's disappointing reply.
I'm trying to talk to you guys. No one's talking to you. That is it?
Yes.
The blue team still had 9 tables to go, and this drove Chef Ramsay nuts. He gathered the blue team and told them that about 36 people were still waiting for their food. Plus, they didn't have enough pork to serve. They only had 8 portions left, and Chef Ramsay wasn't having it. Ramsay then ordered the blue team to bring up the wasted pork tray, but they didn't have enough. and this left the famous chef really frustrated. He then asked the team if they threw some away, and the team denied it, but they had to look for a solution. With no backup pork, the blue team was in a huge dilemma. And well, Chef Ramsay was appalled.
But you said 16 portion yield. Yeah. I said be smart, trim one off that.
Ben Milbourne said that the reason they didn't have a backup was because they had a plan. Chef Ramsay was already frustrated, so what actually happened? The problem was the portion sizes. They were giving away way too much. But this wasn't acceptable, so this is what Chef Ramsay had to say.
Can we come together as a team and come up with a solution to how we finish this, please?
Of course, they couldn't just go back to the table and say, hey, we gave away way too much, so could I take your plate back? Chef Ramsay wanted an immediate solution, or he'd enlist all the contestants into the elimination test round. And well, this is the idea they came up with.
That can be saved. Down the middle. Trim.
Ben quickly got Reynolds to get the portion they needed for the rest. Thankfully, they quickly got to work and Reynolds did his magic, serving to the rest of the tables.
Let's finish it off.
Come on, Blue, we need to lift this up a bit.
Finish strong, let's go.
So these are the times that Chef Ramsay got super angry on MasterChef. Do you remember any other times when Chef Ramsay lost it on MasterChef? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys!